behind every great man, there stands a great woman. And in Star-Rail, behind this amazing woman, is this little dude. Yanqing, or as he should be called, Yanqing, is arguably the weakest 5-star unit in the game right now. Now this doesn't mean he's always been terrible. At the release of Honkai Star-Rail, most of you might not have been here, Yanqing was actually the primary DPS for the first few clears of MOC 10 back in 1.0. This was partially because there wasn't really any other good DPS units besides Sealer, and the stages were mostly Ice Week, but it was still impressive. And even right now, he isn't unplayable. I'm sure plenty of Yanqing mains are clearing MOC with him, especially in the Ice Week stages. There was even an MOC 12 a few months back where big Star-Rail creators Mr. Pokey and Gachasmack even showcased a zero cycle, although it was with an E1 Ranmei. Now despite all this, obviously he's still at the bottom. This recent MOC 12 where he did perform had a turbulence that helped Yanqing a lot, and without it, pretty much every limited 5-star and even some of the 4-stars outperform him in most content. And unfortunately, that's completely by design. Yanqing is a 5-star standard character, as in he's one of the guys you get when you lose the 50-50. Now for some reason in Star-Rail, our standard characters aren't actually that bad yet, which makes this a bit hard to explain, but when you lose the 50-50, the last thing Hoyo wants is for you to be satisfied. They want you to be sad. So when you see that standard character pop up on your screen, you spend money to get that guarantee on the limited character. I honestly don't know why they gave Himeko Pure Fiction, and it's such a cool thing for them to do, but I really don't see anything like that happening again, especially for a character like Yanqing. But for the sake of this video, let's pretend they do. Mr. Darway suddenly realized that he really likes Yanqing, and he wants to make him playable. Now to figure out how we can make Yanqing great again, we have to know what his weaknesses are, and there are a lot of them. Firstly, he's the epitome of a hunt character. His damage is purely single target locked, and there's nothing in the game that can change this. Now this isn't inherently a bad thing, since hunt is meant to be the single target path, but this does lock him completely out of ever being playable in pure fiction. But even as a pure single target DPS, Dr. Ratio is one of the strongest units we currently have in the game, so there is still potential for Yanqing. Well, unfortunately that brings us to our second problem, and that's his multipliers. Not only is Yanqing a 1.0 character, he's also a standard character. His multipliers by design are just objectively lower than all the others. Let's look at his most easy comparison, Ratio. Yanqing's skill multiplier is very straightforward, just 220% of his attack. Dr. Ratio's skill is lower at 150%, but when you add the follow-up he throws after, it goes up to 420%. If we give Yanqing his follow-up, which is a bit RNG, his multiplier does go up a bit to 270%, but it's still lower. Now obviously multipliers are adjusted according to other parts of the character's kit, like how Yanqing gives himself crit and how Ratio has damage percent buffs, but it still is a very big difference. If we want to go full bare bones and look at the base stats, Yanqing has 679 base attack at level 80, while Ratio has 776. Now his next downside is his relics. The ice set currently in the game kinda sucks. It's not that good, and the 4-piece doesn't really work well with Yanqing since he's already getting so much crit from his kit. Now we can talk about this right now since I'm like 100% sure he will get a better relic set eventually. Relics are pretty character specific, but down the line there will be an ice DPS who releases with their own set that coincidentally also works on Yanqing. It doesn't even have to be an ice set, it could just be an attack percent or damage percent set, but as long as the buffs are better than the current ice set, it would be good enough. We're kinda already seeing this already with the new debuff set, as it's technically his best in slot. It just requires 3+ debuffs, which isn't really realistic, but you get the idea. His final and most glaring problem comes entirely from his talent. Basically, if you don't know what it does, if Yanqing doesn't take damage, he gains 20 crit rate, 30 crit damage, and a chance to do a follow-up attack that freezes. If he does take damage, this just all goes away. Now that's a pretty big deal. I mean, you're losing a whole bunch of crit and an entire extra attack from his kit. Now to save Yanqing, we're going to address this last problem first. The most obvious fix is to run a shielder, and that's exactly it. As annoying and as bad as his talent is in design, all we need is a strong shielder to fix this problem. Japard was pretty good already, he just didn't really add much except for shielding. Aventurine, who's coming very soon, is going to be much better. Not only is his shielding better, but he's also adding his own personal damage to the team, as well as a debuff in his ult. And as shielders get even stronger as the game goes longer, Yanqing is going to keep getting better as a shielder always takes one slot in his teams. Now we can apply this same logic to how we deal with his bad multipliers. It's kind of a band-aid fix, but as harmony units keep getting stronger, it doesn't matter how bad the DPS unit is, as long as you can utilize the buffs of the broken support, you're gonna be just fine. Yanqing is just a generic attack, damage percent, and crit scaling DPS, so he's not gonna need any niche support to work well with him. And if we want to cope a little, in the future, what if they add something like Genshin's Farazan, Sara, and Goro, but to Star-Rail? Basically, these characters are buffers that specialize in buffing a specific element. Coincidentally, Genshin's first 5-star version of this type of character was Shenhe, who buffed Cryo or Ice. Now obviously if this were to be added to the game, Jingliu would be broken beyond belief, but you know, anything for Yanqing, right? Now finally we have to deal with Yanqing's single target problem. Now the only solution I can even possibly think of is to just add something like Pure Fiction, but purely single target. But I don't think this will ever happen for a few reasons. Firstly, MOC is pretty much already there. While most of the stages are more beneficial to blast damage, all the late stages already have a boss fight in them. Fighting 2 to 3 enemies at once is already close enough to fighting one, and I don't think Hoyo will find it worth adding a whole new game mode for it. We also just have a game design issue. I'm pretty sure just throwing damage at a really big boss is not going to be very fun or interactive at all. Star-Rail's already a game where the actual combat gameplay is very simple, so removing the choosing targets part is going to be like removing half the gameplay. Hoyoverse is a game company though, and are a billion times smarter than me at game design, so maybe they'll have an idea of how to make it work, but who knows. Now since half this video has been fueled by Copium anyway, I'm going to throw out a basically impossible idea of a support who can maybe help out our single target DPS. What about someone who mirrors your attacks onto a different target? For example, this character's skill marks an enemy. If an ally attacks this marked enemy, this character will then deal the exact same damage dealt, but spread it across all the enemies. So for example, if Yanqing hits a marked enemy for 100k damage, this support will then do 20k to the 5 enemies on the field. It is a crazy idea, and it might be a bit broken with some of our stronger hunt characters, but I thought I'd throw it out there anyway. And that's pretty much it for the video. Now remember, sorry Yanqing mains, most of these buffs are probably not coming soon, and some of them not ever. But if you do love him, you can still enjoy using him. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on how you think Hoyo could possibly buff Yanqing, and definitely don't hold back on the crazy ideas. Until next time, thanks for watching.